incredibly important job and one that we appreciate greatly. In your name we pray, amen. Amen. There it is. Welcome, citizens of Clay County. I'm calling the board meeting, special meeting to order. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this school board meeting. The meeting is our opportunity to, as your elected representatives, to collaborate openly and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and the education of our children here in Clay County. If you wish to address the board on an agenda item, there will be an opportunity to speak. Please fill out a card, which you will find located in the back room, indicating the specific item, number, or topic you wish to speak about, and turn it in promptly. Your participation is welcomed and appreciated. I thought we had one visitor here.
Behind you.
Thank you. Thank you. How are you doing? We are going to begin with open the public hearing to approve as advertised the 2021-2022 Student and Family Handbook and Code of Student Conduct. Do we have anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? Hearing no comment, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion for approval of, as advertised, the 2021-2022 Student and Family Handbook and Code of Student Conduct.
So moved. I'll second.
Ms. Gilhausen has moved, and Ms. Karakas has seconded. Any discussion?
I have one item. Page 32 about the tobacco, where vapes comes underneath that. I just want to make sure that I know that's become a real problem at our schools, at our high schools, and even though it's in there, it's kind of just hidden in there. So I just want to make sure that our administration really knows that they've got some teeth into all of that to, because I know they're dealing with that, and it's gotten to be a really epidemic problem. Thank you.
I've gotten some calls about it, especially Ridgeview High School is one of them. Is that something that we maybe want to look at and amend and bring back? I mean, we can approve it as is, but then just amend that one section. I think we probably should expand on the vape part of it. I think Mrs. Bullock's right. Has anybody else had any feedback about vaping in the high school?
There's been years of feedback, quite literally.
Right.
And it's one of those problems that, unfortunately, we hear about, not just in the bathrooms, but in the classrooms,
Right.
etc.
Right. Well, they look like they could be a zip drive. They look so different than just a cigarette. So it's a lot harder, apparently, to, you know, catch it, confiscate it, whatever. So if you could have staff just kind of address that and maybe bring that back a little, like you said, a little more neat and right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm still having difficulty logging in for some reason. And so, Ms. Honora, when we get to that point, I may ask you to vote for me. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Ms. Honora, has everyone voted? Okay. Thank you. Next, we'll open the public hearing to approve as advertised the modifications to the 2020-2021 Student Progression Plan. Any comments regarding the Student Progression Plan? Hearing no comments, I will close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move approval.
Ms. Karakas?
Second.
And Ms. Bullock? Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving as advertised modifications to the 2020-2021 Student Progression Plan signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone who opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Ms. Honora, keep it up, thanks. Was here a half hour early and it's still not up. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we're going to open the public hearing to approve as advertised the 2021-2022 Clay County District Schools Phase 2 Smart Restart School Reopening Plan. Are there any comments? Any public comments, discussion?
Do you know if there's gonna be any sort of changes coming out, especially with all the talks in the news about
Name and address.
variant?
Oh,
State
we
your
need
name
your
and
name and
address.
address
Oh,
for the
sorry.
record. Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Caracas.
Thank you. Alicia Tarancon with Action News Jacks. Just trying to reiterate, I know there's been a lot of talks with mask policies in schools. Just wanted to make sure the policy would still stay the same within Clay County.
The policy is, the plan is to recommend and encourage face masks. That is the current policy being voted on here today.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion?
Well, I think overall, you know, we've put the word choice in there, and we've got to hope that people make the right decision and that the children obviously are key. So they're already very confused when a parent tells them one thing and a teacher tells them something else. So the word choice has got to be choice, and we've got to, as you say, they may strongly recommend, but when JAMA puts out a report that talks about the CO2 level with children, you know, we've got a lot of things to consider. And we don't want our children living in fear either, so.
I want to keep in mind, we're following the recommendation from the health department.
Any further discussion? We will close the public hearing and we'll entertain a motion to approve as advertised the 2021-2022 Clay County District Schools Phase 2 Smart Restart Restart School Reopening Plan.
Move approval.
Thank you, Ms. Gilhousen. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. There's been a first and a second, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we're going to approve, sorry, it's not a public hearing, I got caught up there for a second. We need to have a motion to approve the disposal of personal property, 1984 Fleetwood mobile home abandoned on W.E. Cherry's elementary school premises.
I so move.
I'll second.
Ms. Bullock moved and Ms. Caracas second. And discussion, I just want to congratulate Ms. Melton, who has lived there for a number of years, on purchasing her own home. This was really a throwback to when we had, I believe, deputies living on campus. One deputy living on campus and helping us keep our schools from vandalism and things of that nature. And I don't know, just out of curiosity, are there any, there's one left after this? Got it.
What school's that at?
At times, that's, okay, awesome.
I think this was a cafeteria worker, did I
Yes,
miss?
she was.
She was your manager.
There is a mistake in what I put for the agenda item. She didn't retire. She just bought her own home and moved to
No,
Houston.
right,
Gotcha.
right, she's
So,
still working
she's
at
still there.
Cherry,
Yeah.
She just doesn't want the mobile home.
that's right. And it's exciting that she can purchase her own home now, so, thank you, thank you. Any other further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And motion carries.
Sure did.
Goodbye to that, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And next, approve the memorandum of understanding between Magellan Federal Incorporated and the School Board of Clay County, Florida for military and family life counseling program on behalf of the Department of Defense. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move approval.
Ms.
Second.
Gilhousen and Ms. Bullock seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion carries.
I have a question. Our screens, how come our
Aren't
agenda's
showing
not up there? Normally we have our agenda for anybody, you know, watching.
Mhm.
Ms. O'Neill?
Why?
Oh, I thought because it was a special meeting, we didn't need to project it.
Oh,
It's not a workshop, but I'm happy to,
Sorry.
Projected.
Well, we'll definitely want to project it when we're doing the review of everything.
oh, yes, I was ready for that.
And next on the agenda, the review of the 2021-2022 tentative budget for all funds. Mr. Brodsky, are we going to call
Dr.
directly on Dr.
Legatko.
Legatko?
Take it away.
Showtime. No.
It is
That's
showtime.
exactly what it is. I'm gonna move this so I can see the screen. And Mom is gonna bring up the.
Computer thinks it's a Monday.
There we go.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and, am I good?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're gonna review the 2021-2022 tentative budget. The purpose of this meeting is primarily to obtain your approval for the advertisement that will appear in the Thursday's newspaper edition, Play Today newspaper edition. So the primary purpose is for you to approve the advertisement, which you will see as we go through the budget presentation. The reason for this, of course, is that we are going through a process, a budget process right now, as you all are aware of, most of you. Spark would be new to this process. So it is primarily our TRIM, Truth and Millage process, which actually determines the millage rate that will be assessed on behalf of the school board to fund education for the 21-22 school year. So with that, could you next? I'll say next. Is that, will that work for me? Okay.
And please be sure to add that we have no control over this.
That's correct. That
We
is so
say that
correct.
every year, however.
Very correct. So, to continue. Again, I talked about TRIM. TRIM, there is a process, there's a timeline that begins actually in January where we submit our enrollment numbers to the state of Florida, the Department of Education, I'm sorry, and they determine our funding. That begins in January. Of course, this year it was a little late because of COVID, very unusual year from last year even going into this year. So because of that, it was typically, it ended up being in February rather than January. But we typically project our students in January for the following year. So again, it's all a budget, it's all tentative, everything is it's a changing document every single day of the projection all the way to the end of the school year. And I will preface that with saying that we don't even know what we actually earned this past year, which ended June 30th. We don't really know what we've earned as far as revenue until September, September, where we will receive the final calculation from the Department of Education. So again, we're still in a guessing game right now, but you know, so far I believe this year we did pretty well. So again, the TRIM process is a process of which it informs our taxpayers about the legislative process by which the local taxing authority, which is the school board, determines the ad valorem taxes needed to fund our schools. So again, it is a process. Next. Oh, actually, go back one. I just wanted to reiterate today's meeting is related to approving the advertisement. And then the advertisement, once it's placed in the newspaper, and that has to be done within 29 days of TRIM. TRIM starts July 1 of the school year. And then once it's advertised, we are going to also set the public hearing to approve the tentative budget, which will be on July 27th.
And that happens no sooner than 2 days after our advertisement is in the newspaper. I say all this to let you know how rigid the timeline is, that we've got to follow a specific timeline in order to approve a tentative budget and set the millage rate for the next fiscal year, school year. Okay, so. Okay, this chart represents a historical view of our property assessment values for the last 22 years. And you can see if you go back to 2001, our millage required our total millage was about 8.941. And when you look at it for 21-22, our millage has actually gone down significantly. But our property values have gone up, as you can see. And the dollars that we're generating is based on the property values that have increased, not because of the millage rates. It's because of the values of your property. Okay, so what are we proposing for next year? We are proposing a total of 6.775 millage, which will generate about $97,517,605 in revenue, local revenue, to fund to fund education, our expenditures. The total millage rate to be levied is more than the rollback rate by 2.5%. I'll get into the rollback rate in a minute, but our required local effort is 3.527. Which will generate $50,766,730. Our basic discretionary, which is 0.748, will generate about $10,766,519. Capital outlay, the 1.5 mil, will generate $21,590,614, and the additional voted millage, which is the 1.0 mil, will generate approximately $14,393,742.
And this is
So
the
what
last
we're
year for
proposing-
that.
I'm sorry?
We need to keep in mind, this is the last year for that, that 1 mil.
Correct, yeah. Okay, this is a summary of comparison of last year's millage to the current year's millage. So you can clearly see that the taxable value has gone up approximately $850 billion. Is it million dollars? I'm sorry. Yeah. So it went from 13 billion to 14 billion. So there is an increase of the value. So you can, in comparison, if you look at the last year, it was 6.889 in millage. 2021, 2022, it's 6.775. It's a reduction of 0.114. And if property stayed the same, the value stayed the same, every taxpayer in Clay County would experience an $11.40 credit to their tax bill. However, that's not what will happen, because your value went up, and because of that, we have a tax increase. So you'll see the ad where it talks about the tax increase versus no tax increase. So again, the reason the reason the tax will go up is because of the value, the increase in the value of your property, not because of the millage rate. Okay. All right. Okay, here's my favorite part of the presentation. What is the rollback rate? Again, we are required by really the local taxing authority, property appraiser's office, to talk about the rollback rate. So, what is the rollback rate? It really is the millage rate for the new year, which would produce the same level of ad valorem tax revenue as was levied in the prior year. What that means is, it means that what millage the percent increase, the 2.50 that I mentioned over there, the total millage rate to be levied exceeds the rollback rate computed, is about 2.5%. What that means is the current millage rate is 2.5% more than the prior year's rollback rate. So if I'll give you a quick little example. Our rollback rate was about 6.60 in mills. This year, our current rate is about 6.7550. The difference of that, it's about 2.5% more than last year's rate. Okay, so that's really what the rollback rate is.
So that's what we should be putting as our legislative priority, to eliminate the rollback. That should be. Susan, do you know what year that was put into place? Because it wasn't always there.
1980s, it's established in 1980. In the 1980s. It's a very complicated formula, and there are a lot of other numbers that go into the calculation, and to really get the specific numbers, it's really detailed. I'll have to go to the Department of Revenue in Tallahassee to figure that out, but it's a structured calculation that's done, and it's what it is. It is what it is. All right, let's go next. Okay, now we'll go into the advertisement, which is really the purpose of this meeting, is to approve these advertisements that you will see in the newspaper on Thursday. The first advertisement is a summary budget. What that is our total budget for the next school year. We are projecting about approximately 520, to generate approximately 520 $1,446,656. Our budget is over half a billion dollars. Isn't that something? I mean, it's unreal. As you can see, it's made up of 4 major funds. Each fund has its own specific activities, so it's specific to how we can spend those dollars. So again, you've got the general fund, which is our biggest fund. It represents about 72% of our budget, and it's primarily our operational budget. It's our day-to-day, everyday activities. The special revenue is, it's made up of grants and our food service funding. That's also sort of like our operational budget as well. It's part of our operational budget. The federal, which is the food service, everyone's familiar with our food service. It's our lunch program that supports our schools. And then we have the special revenue funds, which is like our Title I, Title II, IDEA funds. Those are our grant funds that are, what is the word I'm trying to say? We get those funds every year, and it's an automatic approval based on the revenue that's available through the federal government, through the state. So we know that we're gonna get some Title I funds. We just don't know how much until the feds do their calculation and tells the state what our percentages for free and reduced lunch students are. There's another set of money that's reported in that fund, and that's the CARES funding. And of course, that's where you'll see that our revenue kind of went up a little bit because we have the CARES and ESSER funds that are reported in that fund. Our debt service represents our debt, just exactly what it says. It's debt service. It is our bond payments, debt payments back to paying off some of our debt that we incurred over the last several years for building new schools, or building schools. Shouldn't say new, they're not new.
Susan, how many years can we expect the CARES fund? And it's not reoccurring, is
No,
it?
it's not.
Just this year.
It is through,
There's
there's a slide that shows the timeline,
Thank
so
you.
we'll get to that. It's in there. But I believe it's through 2023 is the last one, right?
The ones we've actually been awarded so far is just 2022.
2022.
Thank you.
And then, of that's just capital projects, that fund represents capital, exactly what it is. It is spent for building of, maintenance, what else? Facilities, you know, those types of activities. And it's specific to, you know, air conditioning units, purchasing those types of things, fixing a wall, adding a wall, doing different activities for schools. So, and those are the 4 funds that we have right now, or we will have, we always have. And you can see our total budget is about $520,446,656. This is, and this budget it talks about our proposed millage levies, and you can see it right on the ad where it talks about it's 6.7750 total. And then based on that, these are the dollars that will be generated from that mill, as well as the state dollars. And you'll see later on where it will show how much, you know, we'll generate locally to participate in the state funding. Okay? State FDFP. The second ad, okay, this is a big one. This is notice of tax for school capital outlay. The funds that are generated from the 1.50 mil, we are required by law, by statute, to identify the projects that we will be using those funds for. So, again, we have to identify every specific project, whether or not we actually do the project or not, we have to at least let the public know, here's how we're spending our $1.5 million money. And again, this is a listing of all of the projects. There's like 2 pages long. And all of these items that are listed are, has to go through an approval process through the Department of Revenue. So before it's even published out to the public, this goes through a rigorous review by the Department of Revenue, the TRIM office. So they look and make sure that the items on there are reasonable and allowable. So you'll see, you know, all of the different projects our facilities department will be hopefully taking on next year. And it's also aligned with the educational facilities plan that's in your packet that we'll talk about later. So, okay, go to the next. Okay. As you can see, part of it, part of the LCIF also allows us to purchase motor vehicles. It also allows us to replace our equipment, computers, operating systems. It also, as you can see, payment of loans, which is our debt service. So you'll notice in our overall budget, the debt service is a transfer in. So it's an accounting term, but we're allowed to use these funds to pay our repayment of our COPS issues, which is our debt. And we also use some of those dollars to pay for our property and casualty insurance, our premiums. So we also have to advertise when we will have our actual public hearing for the approval of the millage rates and the tentative budget, which will be held on July 27th at 5:01 p.m. at the Teacher Training Center in Fleming Island. Next. The third ad is, as I said, if the millage rate, the percentage is above that percentage is higher than 0, which is above the rollback rate, the number is higher than the rollback rate, then we are required to advertise a proposed tax increase. So as you can see, this is the standard ad, the language that needs to be placed in the newspaper per trim.
Why do we have that line in there that says the remainder of the taxes is proposed solely at the discretion of the school board when it's really not at our discretion?
Well, the .748 and the 1.10 the additional millage, that is the decision of the board.
The additional 1 mil was the
Right.
decision
The
of the voters.
.748 is considered discretionary, and the board does have the option, should they choose to not levy that .748, but I will tell you, 100% of the school district do levy it because it supports it provides it affects the percent of dollars the state will provide to us. So it's part of the money that we need to ensure that we generate the dollars from the state to fund our $500 million budget, so. So with that, and that's where you'll see, our proposed levy is $97,517,605. In order for us to participate in the FEFP, which is the Florida Education Finance Program, we have to levy at least $97,517,605 to generate $236,593,590. So in order for us to get that $236 million, which is again the state's contribution to funding our budget, we've got to pony up. I say it that way because we have to participate in the required local effort, generate $97,517,605. That number goes down, the state contribution goes down. Does that make sense?
So even though it's.
So it's not really at our discretion.
Correct.
No,
correct.
exactly.
Yeah,
But
so
technically
that's
it
so
is, yeah.
misleading to make it
I
sound
know,
like
it's
it's.
just like the rollback rate,
yeah,
it's something I've got to
exactly.
say
Yeah.
because it's
So in
statutorily
order to
required.
participate in the FEFP, we have to levy that exact amount.
Yes. And in the process, it appears that we're taxing higher,
I know.
even though it's lower.
Right.
And in the process, yes, we get the phone call as to why are you increasing all of this? Because we have to.
But we are all
And
happy
every
that our
year we
property,
do go through that every year.
our property values have increased, so we are all
Very
happy
much
about
so.
that.
Very much so.
Thank you, Susan. I know every
Questions
year
so
we
far?
ask the same thing because it's so frustrating that
No, I understand.
it is set by the state and we are following the laws of the state in order to participate. You know,
We've got rules. We've got
Mhm.
rules. All right, so again, those were the 3 advertisements that we really needed to, again, I will need your approval on that once this is completed. But then I'm gonna go into a little more detail about what makes up our budget. I believe you guys might think our budget, what is our budget? You guys might think it's a bunch of spreadsheets. Of course, it's tracking expenditures, and of course, it's, a bunch of forms. My colleagues will say, dadgummit, she has a lot of forms that she sends us that she'd like us to fill out. If we can get $1, I gotta fill out a form, It's part of what we do, what, Sonia and myself and my team does, but in reality, when you look at it, the budget is really, it's an integration of the district's vision, mission, actually it's the vision, the mission, the core values of the superintendent and the school board. And what it does, it transforms the crunching of all these numbers that you're about to see to a purpose-driven expenditure that supports academic success. So if you really think about it, yes, it is a bunch of crunching of numbers, and yes, I like doing that, but it really ends up being supporting the vision and mission of our school board and the success of our academic students. So with that, you can see our general fund. I'm going to speak about general fund first. Our revenue is composed of state, local, federal, and other financing sources. Other financing sources are those transfers that we talked about, where I need to pay our debt or I need to pay for our insurance. You can't pay for those activities in the actual fund that is represented in the overall budget, so I've got to transfer it into the general fund. So with that being said, you can see that 76% of our revenue comes from the state. 21% comes from the local government, it's the required local levy, which is our local property taxes. Of course, federal, which makes up food service, and the grants that I spoke of, is about $3.6 million. Total budget there is about, total revenue is about $312,944,040. All right, so again, as we go into more detail about our budget, you know, we are required to report our expenditures and our revenue in a certain format. So with and again, our work is structured around, account codes. You know, we are required to identify our revenue in certain accounting codes and our expenditures in certain functions and objects and those types of things. So I'm going to try to explain that to you, but hopefully you'll be able to get a bigger picture, an understanding of how our whole budget works. It's an integration of a lot of funds, a lot of movement of funds, and just so that we can maximize our resources. So with that, I'm going to talk about you can see an overall view of our total revenue, and it's made up of local, state, and federal. You know, the biggest percentage there is really our property tax. You can see that's where the required local effort comes in, and that's what makes up the majority of our local revenues. Of course, there's tax redemptions that comes in at the end of the year. We rely on our interest. Well, as you can see, our interest is horrible this year. We're not earning a whole lot of dollars this year, so. And we've got other activity, there are areas in all revenue sources where they're not specific, there's not specific account codes that we report them in, so we are allowed to report them in other. So that's what other represents. Those funding that is not identified within our red book. So you can see we've got about $63 million coming in from local revenues. Our state revenue is about $238,341,269. That dropped from last year due to, again, the FEFP is based on our projections. So this year we projected about 38,680 students to return. So hopefully we will generate those dollars. Hopefully the students the kids will come back. The categorical went down by about $4.8 million because of class size. We get a set of funding for class size specifically. However, this year I believe the state found an error in their formula, and they said they were overfunding the school district. Therefore, there was a bill submitted legislatively to adjust our class size, and the impact to Clay County is about $4.8 billion. It's significant, so we needed to adjust that. And of course, we don't have school recognition anymore, so those funds went away.
And how much was that last year?
The
School recognition?
do you remember?
The last time we done it was
It's been a couple of years.
2019, 20, and I would say it was about close to $3 million.
About $3 million.
But that's sort of passed through.
Yeah, it went to the school.
Yeah,
Well, it went,
Yeah.
to the teachers.
But
and
still,
yeah.
but it impacted the overall revenue.
Right.
And then, of course, our federal is about $3.6 million, which is steady about across the board. And keep in mind, this is a proposed budget. Everything is proposed. Let's do the next one. The The other part of the budget that I talked about is the other financing sources. And again, these are the different categories that's transferred into the general fund. We've got the LCIF transfer, the 4.8, which covers, certain expenditures. The insurance loss recoveries are those funds that we receive for accidents or those types of accidents where we receive the recovery. It's not our fault, it's someone else's, but, it's not a lot of money there. The sale of land and equipment, it's our surplus sales. Every monthly, we bring the list of items to remove, and then, of course, it's put on, we try to generate some revenue from those pieces of equipment that we no longer use. And then, of course, you're familiar with the $2 million that is transferred from the $1 million that's generated through that 1.1 mil. And of course, in 1920, we had that bus lease that we paid for, so that's why you'll see that $10 million in 1920. We had the bus lease there. Okay. All right, next. Okay, the next part of it is our expenditures. How are we going to spend those dollars? Well, here we go. General fund, how we spend those dollars, it goes into these categories, which, again, most, part of it goes to the schools and our cost centers for operations. Our categorical programs are those programs that are specific, such as reading, such as instructional materials, such as, ESE. So there's all of those so that's what the categorical program represents. Non-recurring appropriations, those are items, one-time use, one-time expenditures that we would experience. So we try to put as much as I can to show, well, how do we spend our general fund? Actually, all funds, but mostly general fund and special revenue. This is how we typically would spend our dollars. And of course, you've got the fund balance, which is an important piece of our budget. It includes restricted, assigned, and unassigned. And I just put the definition for contingency, because we need to have a contingency fund. Okay, how is it broken down? Your function codes are broken into these categories, where instruction is all represented in function 5,000. So when you look at the expenditure report, you'll see everything that's a 5XXX represents instructional. It's anything in the school, anything even at the district office, but the instructional side of it. The instructional support is the 6,000. Your general support are your 7,000 to 8,000. An example of general support, 7,500. Business affairs, that is ours. We are general support to the schools. Community service is 9,100, and non-program charges, which is 9,200. Next. So, I spoke about function codes. Now you can see how we've spent our funds for the 2021 school year, 1920. You can see there's a comparison of each category. So, you can see we're spending about, the majority of our funds are spent on instructional. I'd say about 76%. Take the 5,000 all the way to the 6,500. And those funds are there to support schools, indirectly or directly. So about 76% of our expenditures under the function code is being diverted for the purpose of the schools, the instructional side of it. Okay? So, you have any questions on that? Let's move on. Next. Oh, we did it already. All right. So again, we go further, a deeper dive. Again, we Not only do we have to report our expenditures by function, we also have to go further and represent it by the different specific categories of how we're spending it. So again, you've got salaries, benefits, purchase services, energy services, materials and supplies, capital outlay, and other expenses. These are all self-explanatory as to what they represent. So, as you can see, our business is their people, salaries and benefits. The majority of our funds are spent on salaries and benefits, about 79%. Budgeted, it's about 79.12% salaries and benefits. Last year, we spent a little over 80%. But we're consistent over the last 3-4 years that we've been spending about 80% of our dollars in salaries and benefits, so. The 300 represents contracts that we do have. The one thing I will tell you, you'll notice in materials and supplies, it's a significant increase. The reason for that increase is we have an adoption this year. So because of the adoption, that's where we are required to report the expense for the adoption, the instructional material adoption that we will be going through this year. Okay? All right, let's speed this up now. All right, so you can, like I stated, our salaries and benefits are really what represents the majority of our budget. And that is consistent across, pretty much all school districts, and for the last several years as well, so. Our total expenditures is $324,024,740. And then we can go to the next page, which is, I think everybody's waiting to see. All right, so this is a summary page of what transpired in our general fund. So our beginning fund balance of July of last year was about $36.8 million. Bring it over. Our total revenue for this year projected is about $305,941,040. We're expecting to spend approximately $324,024,740. You add in our other financing sources, we'll end up with a fund balance of about $25.7 million. It's less than last year's, but we're okay. And of course, our unassigned is going to be about 5%, 5.01%. This year, ending June 30th, 2020, we brought in about $34 million in revenue, our fund balance. We started with about 34. Our total revenues, we brought in about $303 million, 303,660,674. Less our expenditures of about $305,474,509. Brought in some transfers, other financing sources, $4.5 million. And again, the difference between what's projected and what's unaudited at this point is this is actual. The budget is budget. I have to budget for every expenditure, every revenue that I think we will receive, we think we will receive, every expenditure that could potentially happen. Whether it happens or not, at least we are prepared for it. So, and then the other financing sources, the same thing, depending on how our revenues look, how our expenditures are, would determine whether or not we actually transfer all of those funds. So again, it's a decision that's made towards the end of the year once I know the revenues and expenditures. So I wanted to explain the difference between the other financing sources so that, there's a big difference there, about $3 million. So we ended the year with about a 5% fund balance, which is good.
Which is great.
So, all right, move on. And this is our historical view of where our fund balance has been over the last several years, and we are continually to progress up. We hope we continue to maintain that momentum, but we shall see. gonna go through the rest of this pretty quickly now, because I know the general fund is really the biggest fund that has the majority of our expenditures. So I'm just gonna go through the rest of this really quickly. And keep in mind, there will be a repeat of this beautiful presentation on the 27th.
At 5:01.
At 5:01, that's correct. That's statutorily
Not
set
a
too.
minute?
Anything after 5:01. All right, so fund, okay. So another, part of my ad though includes the 105, the 1 mil. So for this presentation, I broke it out so that we can see what exactly did we spend in the 105 versus our general fund. So, all right, so our 105, as you can see by function, we spent about we're projecting to spend about $5 million in facilities and acquisition. Again, we didn't spend the amount because of, again, probably COVID and not having materials or not having the resources to do the projects that is in that advertisement. So it's an actual expense, and a lot of it could roll into the next year. So the operational plant is, again, it's consistent with the support for the police department and the Guardian program, and any other operational expenses that are in. And then maintenance, of course, there's a couple of positions that are paid from the mill to support maintenance. Okay, so next. Okay, this is by object. You can see how we're spending our dollars. Salaries, benefits, the different categories by object. And they are consistent with the prior year. Capital outlay, that's where the bigger, the building and those types of things will occur. So. All right, move on. Here's a pictorial view of how those funds are being spent. About 51% is used for safety and security of our school facilities, which is really, one of the primary purpose of that 1 mil, safety and security. But you really need to add the salaries and benefits for the police force, because that is school safety and security. So the majority of our funds are going for the purpose it's intended for.
So we'll have to move that to the general fund. Have you looked at that? I know
Yes.
we've talked about it every single year. We say, make
I
sure
know.
this is transferred over and budgeted for, because that has to continue.
It has to happen, yes. We'll move on. As you can see, here's the summary. So the fund balance is being built up so that we can support an extension of the police force. Does that make sense?
It just has to continue though, so it has to be worked into the general fund.
Right, yes.
Not just a little extra for a year or two, but it
I
has to
know,
continue.
but again, that's where, in 2 years or in 1 year, as we're building the budget, we will take a look at, as we go through the budget process and we go through a committee of meetings to ensure that we can present a balanced budget while keeping all the other requests, so that we can cover all the requests that's being put forth for that year. So, yes, it's gonna be an exercise that we'll have to go through.
Figure it out. I know you'll do it.
Oh, goodness. Okay. This is just a breakdown of how we're spending our dollars on the different programs within the 105. So you've got the school police, their salaries, benefits. You've got the police, their operational expenditures, the Guardian program, and the facilities, and of course the health insurance and 2 million transfer. All right, we'll go into debt service, and this is where it'll speed up. Okay, next page. Again, this is just the summary, a summary of our debt service. We typically will transfer in, which is the other financing sources, about $6.8 million. We get a little bit of revenue from the state, about $720,000 that goes towards our debt. And pretty much our debt is about $7 million annually. So yeah, I mean, that's self-explanatory. Our total debt is $7 million. We'll receive about 6.8 from the transfer of capital, and then the difference is paid by the state. So continue the next page. This is a summary of the different debt that we do have. We have SBE bonds, racetrack bonds. Those two bonds are really the state bonds, dollars on behalf of the school district. So, and that's our remaining principal and interest payments. The original was about $1 million for the SBE. Racetrack is about $3 million. You can see we have little debt in those two. It's hopefully going to be paid off very soon. The rest of it, the majority of our debt are those COPS issues. You know, we have an 05, a 2000, 2014, and an 08. Oh, I'm sorry, 17, 12, and 14. The rest of it's been refinanced for lower interest, so that we can reduce the interest that we are responsible for. So the total COPS is about $5.1 million. We do have the bus lease that we are required, that we went into in 2019. So that annual payment is about $1.6 million. There are bank charges that is, there's always fees that's associated with any type of financing that you do. And it's about 16,000. So our total debt, again, is about $7,079,480. Okay? The next page really is another pictorial view of our total debt and what's remaining, our remaining debt. So we have a total of about $44 million in debt left, which is pretty good considering for the size of this district. Our debt is going down, which is a good thing. Yeah, so. Okay. That is another summary. Continue. All right, so now we'll get into the capital projects. All right, so next page. This is just an explanation of the different types of funding that comes in to support capital projects. I left PICO in there, so I just wanted everyone to be reminded that we used to get this funding and it went away. So now we no longer get PICO, so again, we're doing more with less.
Now the charter schools get it.
Yes, exactly. So capital is supported by 1.5 mils, the CONDS, local sales tax, which that just thank you, we got that, and of course impact fees. Okay, so now how are we spending all of those funds? Well, here it represents the local revenue, which is the property tax exemption, which the property tax is the 1.5 mil, the sales tax, our impact fees, and of course if we get any miscellaneous other, I don't have anything there for projections. So we intend to, and of course you've got the state revenue, whereas the CONDS, and I've got charter school capital outlay. That's a flow through, so we have to report it. But it is a capital outlay. They do submit, the state provides us with the revenue, and we just turn around and give it to the charter schools.
Is that the PICO dollars? Or is that different than the PICO dollars?
It's probably coming from PICO dollars. Yeah. I just know we receive it and we are required to just turn it over to the charters. So total revenue will be about $45,941,900. How are we spending those dollars? Next. You can see it's self-explanatory. The majority of those expenditures will be in building and fixed equipment and remodeling and renovations. Keep in mind also, for budgeting purpose, the facilities division actually allocates all of the revenue for projects. So you'll notice in unaudited final, there's a total of spending is about 11 million, of which 5 million and 2 million, 7 million, $8 million were spent, as compared to what I'm saying, where we're budgeting the 42 million, 8 and 24.9 million, so what happens again is they budget out, they appropriate out the funds to support the projects that's on that list that's in the advertisement, but whether or not we get to those projects, it's determined by, of course, the resources that are available for that year. So, just wanted to explain the discrepancy between the budget and the actual. Okay? Next. Summary page talks about where we will end up with a fund balance of about $6.2 million in our proposed budget. The unaudited final, you'll see, we ended with a higher fund balance, the 47 million. Again, that's because we didn't complete all the projects that was listed. But at least it was on there. It says we could potentially do those projects. The money rolls over to the new year, and we allocate it out or appropriate it out, so assigned to those projects. Okay? All right, we're getting close. All right, we're getting into special revenue. Oh, I know, I didn't even know I did that. All right, these are the funds that represent the special revenue fund. Everyone is familiar with the food and nutrition program. It's Fund 410. Special revenue, our contracted programs, 420, which are those programs like Title I, IDEA, Title II, Title III, any of those types of programs. That's where we report their revenue and expenditures. Special revenue, of course, the state has given us new funding codes for the new set of projects. So we've got ESSER, ESSER, which is Fund 441, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. And then we've got Special Revenue CARES Act Relief Funds. And then we've got Special Revenue CRISA, ESSER 2, Fund 443. So there's a lot of funding that came from the last three bullets, of course, in the last year or so. So we've received quite a bit of funding. But I can guarantee you we have spent it.
We won't get that again, I mean.
I know, it's a
That's
one-time
not-
use, so, alright, so let's go to the next one, which is food service. The food service revenue, I'll just go straight to the bottom where Susie has done an excellent job. I commend her so much on the way she has handled our food service program this last year, because at the beginning of last year's budget, I thought the general fund would be supporting food service, but she was very strategic in the way she handled funding food service for last year. And you can see the difference. It was a change in the way the federal government, I guess, funded us. And, she had the choice on how to change, or whether or not what decision to make as far as which funding path she should take. And obviously she took the right one, because she's doing very well with our food service program. So our total revenue projected is about $19,009,300. Our expenditures are expected to be about $18.9 million budgeted. And then, her summary is she's expected to have about a $6.5 million fund balance. She ended the year with about a 6.5, which is excellent. Typically, the federal program, food and nutrition program, you are required to maintain at least three months of expenditures. So, and that represents about a $4.2 million. She's got a lot more than, what the federal nutrition program requires, so she's doing very well.
And this past year, we provided breakfast and lunch to all of our students,
That's correct.
whether that was it.
Right.
And this year, we're
We
providing
continue to
breakfast
do that.
and lunch to all of our students.
Correct.
I think that is phenomenal.
Yes, she has done I commend her
Wow.
for doing a really, really good job in overseeing the food service program. All right, so now we get into contracted programs. Again, I spoke about what our contracted programs and ESSER, all of the ESSER funds, they are a reimbursement type program. So there's really no fund balance. You've got to you have to expend the dollars first before you can get reimbursed. So pretty much general fund is supporting it until we can draw down those funds from the state. So these are the different programs that we currently have in place. We expect to generate about $15.9 million. It's slightly less than what we had last year, but again, it could change. These are all projections. We don't know. Each year we might get, it might change. The formula may change and we may get more dollars. So again, this is what we are projecting for next year. So you can see the different programs. The CTE program, Title II, IDEA, Title I, ODEA, we do have a little bit of that, Title III, 21st Century Grant, and then, there are a few miscellaneous state and federal. Okay, next. Okay, again, here's the function on how we spend those dollars. About 60% of those funds go into, it's actually a little more, but you can see it goes out to the schools, in support of the schools. The 7,800 is transportation, where we do provide some transportation. This year, I believe it may be Title I is providing, I think it's Title I, that might be providing some transportation to our students. Okay. And then it's by the object. You can see how we're actually further details on how we're spending the dollars by the majority of it, again, salaries and benefits. So 76% is going towards salaries and benefits. And then the summary page, like I said, we cannot maintain a fund balance, so it's a reimbursement program, so we spent about $15.9 million and we received $15.9 million to cover the expense. All right, so the next one is the CARES Act. So what I tried to do is pretty much give you the names of the programs, the project period, what we were awarded, what we've ended up spending, and what we rolled to the new year. So you can see the first CARES Act that we received, it ends September 2022. We received about $4 million. We spent about $3.6 million. That's last year, where we ended up sending a lot of the funds to the schools so that they can purchase PPE. We purchased the computers, the Chromebooks. We did hotspots. We did everything we could in order to successfully roll out the brick and mortar and virtual program last year. Okay, so that helped us a lot with doing those activities. And we've got about $387,000 left over, so we'll probably spend that out, giving it to the schools to buy some more PPE for this year. And then some of these other programs were so specific that we needed to spend it on those, like this GEARS Summer for Recovery program. That was through August. It was just from June 2020 to August 31st, but I believe we did it as a summer recovery program. They gave it always dates back to when COVID started, but when the funds really got here, it was months later. It was the July of March is when COVID started, right, when we had to, so then the July is really when all of these funds started to come in, and they backdated the beginning period. So it allowed school districts to go back and charge any expenditures that they incurred going through, COVID. We didn't do that. We actually used the funds in the manner of which the state intended us to use it, you know, so you can see, and if anyone needs further details on these programs, by all means, you know, my office is open, please come by, I'll give you the details, it's very detailed, there's a lot of information in it. But I wanna go to the last one, which is the CRISA Act, which is ESSER Advance. Because school districts did such a great job in spending their ESSER 1 funds, they provided us some advanced funding for this CRISA, ESSER 2, but they gave it to us and it had to be spent by September 1 of 2021. So, you know, what are we in, July, August, September? I have 3 months to spend about almost $7.3 million. That was our advance, which is, you know, we've spent it, don't get me wrong, we have spent it.
I was gonna say, do you need any examples or ideas, though I'm sure you could come up
The
with.
majority of it is being spent for our summer program. I'm purchasing some of the curriculum that we will need, you know, for the upcoming year. Again, it goes back, it backdates to March of 2021, but like I said, we spent our dollars in the manner that we needed to. So, you know, our general fund was used to support the operation of our schools, the intent of what we were supposed to do. We took these funds and used it for PPE, for the things that were needed, one-time use funds, you know, non-reoccurring expenditures. And that is what we have to do, because it would be, you know, I would have to pick up the expense later, and I can't afford that right now. Well, we can't afford that, not we. So you can see how we've spent the CARES funding. Now, for last year, again, it came very late, so you'll see there's not a whole lot of expenditures. We still have summer school going on, and we still have a few things, so that's why you see a large number in the 21-22 school year, where it's about $5.9 million, which will be spent. So, by September 1, because I am not giving any of these funds back.
Good for you.
Okay, so then the next part of it is really how are we spending all of these funds? And you can see, you know, it's broken out by salaries, benefits, purchase services, energy services, materials and supplies, capital outlay, and other expenses. Okay? And again, by function, you can see where the category of funds are being spent in the different areas. And then summarize. Next slide. These are federal funds, they're not operational funds, so these funds are, if we spent 6.8, we drew down 6.8. So. All right, we're getting close. Finally, the self-insurance fund. This fund is our internal service fund. It is part of the general fund, and it represents our self-insurance. It's a fund that provides for our property and casualty program, short and long-term disability coverage, and it includes excess property, automobile liability, workers' comp, oil and machinery, errors and omissions, state of Florida workers' comp self-insure assessment, catastrophic excess medical insurance for sports, and student accident insurance. So these are the liability type, the insurances that we have to maintain as a business, as a school system, in order to function. Our workers' comp. Again, charges for services is about 2.2029,153. There's a little bit of interest there. Again, our interest is horrible. So we plan on getting in about $2.2 million, $2,039,000. Next page is a summary page of really, we expect to receive in about $2 million. Our expenditures is going to be about 3.4. We'll take a little loss in that. However, we've got we have a good net position of about $5.1 million. We can pay for our workers' comp claims and liability claims. All right. So, what I want to say about my balanced budget, I do have a balanced budget. And it provides for fiscal efficiency, maximizing our scarce resources, stretching our human capital, and it provides for budget adjustments without adversely impacting our student achievement. I think it's a good budget. I would also like to thank Sonia and Michelle, my teammates here, for their assistance. I mean, we've worked nights, we've worked long hours just to get this completed. So I wanted to thank Sonia and Michelle personally. And then, so the next step would be to approve the advertisement for the proposed millage rate and the tentative budget for 2021-22. Need you to set the public hearing for July 27, 2021, where we will adopt the millage rate and approve the tentative budget. And then we will also set the final public hearing for September 9th, 2021, to adopt the final millage and the budget for 21-22. So, also, I know you've got the item number 7 to review the tentative 21-22 to 2025-26 educational facilities plan, the EFP. You have it in your possession for review. We will not go into a detailed presentation. That presentation will be completed on the 27th, along with the same beautiful presentation you just heard from me. With that, I'll say the end. Yay!
Dr. Augusto, thank you. And Sonia, thank you. And Michelle, thank you. And everybody else who is involved with this. This is an annual task that you guys take on that is second to none. And it makes, in essence, our jobs, I don't want to say easier, but truly more understandable. And when we're considering the budget and everything that we do to help our kids. And this year particularly, that list of federal programs, I just had to chuckle. Because I thought, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that, and never heard about that one. But thank you for all that you do. We greatly, greatly appreciate it.
And like I said, my office door is open. If anyone has any questions, anyone additional information on any of these items, please, please call us. We'll be happy to share any information with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Dr. Legato?
No, thank you.
And we have our educational facilities plan, the tentative that you mentioned, that we are not going to review at this point. We can take this home, review it on our own,
Yes.
and prepare our questions for next week,
That's correct.
the 27th. That sounds great. At this point, I'd like to hear a motion to approve the advertisement for the 2021-2022 tentative budget and millage.
Is this,
I'm sorry?
is this on any agenda for approval?
On this agenda for,
It says advertisement for, but it doesn't say whether it's a motion or what. I don't know what it is.
oh, I have motion here, I'm sorry.
So it's been amended.
It says advertise.
It's a motion to advertise it?
It's a motion to advertise.
Okay. It's not on mine, that's what I was wondering.
Okay. Ms. Clark has moved. Is there a second?
My second.
Ms. Bullock has seconded it. Any further discussion?
The recommendation, Mr. Bickner, it is worded in the recommendation, so I think we're covered with that. It says, that the Clay County School Board accept the advertisement for the proposed 2021-2022 tentative budget and proposed levies as follows. Is that acceptable, or does it have to be?
Mr. Bittner, do you want to vote on my?
Because if it's not on there as an action
There
item,
it
even
is.
though we have to take action, we might have to change something. It should say
And it says
approve.
accept the advertisement for.
Up there, motion to authorize publication.
Yeah, but it's not on the agenda that way that the public saw, so it's not advertised to approve, you know, or to
But you
approve the
said that
advertisement.
the agenda item itself has that on it,
Yes.
Bonnie, can you pull it up? It doesn't exactly
I
say
think
that,
so,
Bruce.
and
Under A.
so I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly say.
And a recommendation.
Now, expected outcome, approval of the required advertisement to be published as required by Florida statute. That is there.
That'll work. Okay.
You good?
Yep.
So there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, any other questions from the audience? I don't believe so. Anybody want, Phil, you're looking like you want to jump up and say something. Superintendent comments, Mr. Brodsky.
Not much. We're excited. We have our new teacher orientations going on right now. It's always great to go and talk to that group and see new fresh faces, and I remember that, 30 some odd years ago, that excitement that they have for education and coming in. I did kind of point out to them that they picked a weird time to become a teacher. Of course, they laughed at that. We're excited about the new school year. 2 weeks, teachers return. So it's right around the corner, and summer's moving fast, and we're gearing up, and we're all excited to get the school year started.
I'm thinking back a few weeks when you said, instead of counting down to the end of the school year, we start the count up or count down
That's
to the
right,
beginning of
that's
the
right.
school year, and we're at this point, so, great. Mr. Bickner, any comments?
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bullock?
Just a reminder that next Monday, the 26th at 5 o'clock, there'll be a community meeting at Keystone Heights High School at 5, going over the feasibility study, and then Mr. Brodsky sent out an invite to everybody, all the board, and I hope you'll consider attending, and so looking forward to that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gilhausen? Ms. Clark?
I just wanted to remind all the Clay citizens, when you buy an automobile, stay in Clay, we need the sales tax. And please move to a more expensive home so we can collect more property tax. And bring your friends here from Duval, and so, anyway. But yeah, it's also very important.
Great. Ms. Kirkus? I don't believe I have anything either. Just a reminder, as we indicated, there is the meeting Monday night at Keystone Heights High School. The Clay Education Foundation, I have to do a shameful plug for the Clay Education Foundation. Their golf tournament is coming up on Monday the 26th as well, so if you feel lucky, you might want to join in on that at the Fleming Island Golf Course. The agenda workshop for the 27th, as a reminder to all of us, has been changed to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So please remember that, check your calendars for that.
And 2 locations.
The location for the agenda workshop is here. The location for the tentative, or the budget hearing, I say tentative, it is definitely the budget hearing, at 5:01 will be in the TTC at Fleming Island High School. And I don't believe there's anything further at this point, and with that, we will adjourn the meeting.